All right, so let's pick up again where we left off here in QuickBooks Online for our payments. Now, first and foremost, of course, we can see those payments that we put into Housecall showing up over here. Status is paid. We see two payments here, and we see a $0 invoice down here. Now, very importantly, we are going to see our discount right here, pulling onto our invoice, but we are not going to see anything in this deposit line. Deposits coming in from Housecall Pro are going to function a little bit differently from deposits coming from the QuickBooks system, especially coming from estimates inside of the QuickBooks system. We're not going to see a deposit amount in here. We are going to see that deposit come in as a regular payment. So this may be an opportunity to use that notes field, just like I put a check number in here to call out a deposit. But again, big picture takeaway is that the payment amount is going to be coming over into QuickBooks, excuse me, and it is going to be incrementing down the balance due on this invoice. Now, let's take a look at this check payment here. So you can see how absolutely every payment that we make in Housecall is going to come initially into QuickBooks Online. We're of course going to have our customer, our date, our method. Our reference number is going to be a combination of the invoice number as well as whatever we typed into that notes field, in this case, that check number. And it is going to go to our undeposited funds. Now, the name you have on this undeposited funds account may be a little different. You may have an account number in there, something like that. But the important piece is that it's going into an undeposited funds account. We, of course, then have our invoice that is being paid off here, the amount we're applying to the invoice, the amount we're applying to credit, and then, of course, the option to clear the payment. So Housecall is never going to create a credit with a payment. Housecall will never allow a payment for a larger amount than is due to be pushed over into QuickBooks. Something very, very important to keep in mind, the only time we will see a credit here in any way coming from Housecall is if we create the invoice, put a payment on the invoice, have the payment over just like this, and then we, for some reason, decrease the total amount of that payment in Housecall and send it back over. Maybe we remove one of the line items, or maybe we give an additional discount for some reason. That will create a credit on the account, but also one assumes there's going to need to be a refund of some form on that account to give the money back to the customer. So the customer should balance to zero in the end. Just do keep in mind those credits are only created in a situation where we've already sent over a payment for an invoice, and then we've lowered the payment, the total amount of the invoice, to lower than that payment. Now, for cash, for check, for anything in the world that is not Housecall Pro's credit card processor, this is as far as Housecall is going to take it. It is now ready to be deposited however you ordinarily do your deposits. Housecall is not going to be making any further adjustments to this payment. It is just going to go into your deposit screen, just like any other payment received in QuickBooks. If, however, you are using Housecall Pro's credit card processor, there is one more step that Housecall is going to take for you, and that is the deposit step. So, for example, if we swipe a card on a Monday, the payment, of course, is going to go into Housecall, and the payment is going to be received over in QuickBooks. This is what we want. This is what we expect. The invoice is, in fact, paid, even though that money isn't in your account yet. We then flash forward a few days, maybe Wednesday morning, when Housecall deposits that money into your bank account, into your Chase or your Wells Fargo or what have you. At that point, Housecall is going to come back over here into QuickBooks. It's going to grab this payment that it already put in there, and it's going to run a deposit for you. It's going to, of course, select the payment. It's going to add in a correcting transaction down on those additional funds lines at the bottom of our deposit. And it is going to save our credit card fees in there. So for the sake of demonstration, I'll give you a quick look at how that will look inside of QuickBooks. Do keep in mind, of course, standard disclaimer, this is a test account that we are using here. Please do not in any way take the things that you're seeing in terms of account structure or balances or anything like that in this test QuickBooks account as instruction or guidance for how you would want to run a QuickBooks account for your own business. So let's save and close here, and let's create a new deposit. Now, keep in mind, this is exactly what Housecall is going to do for you. Now, these are all cash and check, of course, but if we pretend for a moment that these are credit card transactions here, right? We would select the appropriate payments, right? Housecall is going to select the appropriate payments. It's going to come down here on these lines. It's going to say, okay, here's the Housecall Pro credit card fee vendor. It's going to say, here's the Housecall Pro credit card fees cost of goods sold account. And then over here in the amount, it's going to say, whatever those credit card fees are. Maybe it's negative, maybe it's $25, maybe it's $2 because we don't quite have such a large deposit, right? Whatever that appropriate amount is, Housecall is going to put in here for you. Now, it is going to do this for all of the credit card payments that are being deposited on that day. We do batch our deposits, so we do 6 deposits a week. So it is very likely you'll see multiple invoices selected, and that you'll see multiple line items inside of that deposit to account for the credit card fees on those different invoices. So, given that this is a much smaller invoice, the second one, right, it would be a lesser fee. So this is what Housecall Pro will do for you. Now, absolutely critically, to allow this process to happen, you cannot make changes or edits to the payments that Housecall is going to need when it does this process for you. So the only time I see issues around these deposits, around the auto deposit feature, is when people have perhaps gotten a little bit overexcited, have gotten a little bit ahead of themselves, and have deposited the payments that Housecall built for them before Housecall's had a chance to come in and deposit them for before Housecall had a chance to come back in and do the deposit for you. I know it can be tempting. I know it can be very easy to catch one of those credit card payments inside of a deposit that you're already running. We're just going to want to make very sure that we do not pull those payments into a deposit, because of course when Housecall comes back, tries to run your deposit, it's not going to be able to. Not to mention we will have a reconciliation issue if wrong payments are in wrong deposits, and we want to make sure to avoid all of that. So just leave those credit card payments alone, let Housecall come back and deposit them for you, and when it is all done, the deposit amount in QuickBooks will match the deposit amount in our bank, and those transactions will be reconciliation ready. Now, with that, I'm going to end this segment here on payments. We are going to have a couple more videos in this series looking at different things. The next one up is going to be our integration videos. So talking very specifically about the functions of the integration for QuickBooks Online. We look forward to seeing you for that, and good